Every morning, we wake to the same cruel reality. The world doesn't care about our plans, our feelings, or our desperate need for control. Yet somewhere in ancient Rome, a slave named Epictetus discovered something that would change everything we thought we knew about human resilience. He realized that true freedom isn't found in our circumstances. It's found in how we choose to meet each day before the world has a chance to break us down. Before we dive deeper into this transformative morning philosophy, I want you to consider subscribing to this channel if you're ready to build genuine inner strength. We're building a community of people who refuse to let external chaos dictate their internal peace. Most people stumble through their mornings like zombies, checking phones before their eyes fully open, immediately surrendering their mental sovereignty to notifications, news, and other people's emergencies. We've become prisoners of reactivity, starting each day already defeated by forces we've chosen to give power over us. But what if there was another way? What if the first hour of your day could become an impenetrable fortress of clarity and purpose? The morning hours hold a unique power that the ancients understood deeply. Before the world awakens with its demands and distractions, there exists a sacred window where we can forge our character and set the trajectory for everything that follows. This isn't about productivity hacks or morning routines designed to make you more efficient at serving other people's agendas. This is about reclaiming your fundamental right to begin each day as the author of your own experience. When Marcus Aurelius wrote his personal reflections that would become the Meditations, he wasn't creating content for public consumption. He was engaging in a private practice of mental preparation, using the quiet morning hours to remind himself of life's fundamental truths and his role in responding to them with wisdom. His first entry captures this perfectly. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "The people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." This wasn't pessimism, this was preparation. By mentally rehearsing the challenges he would face, Marcus wasn't hoping for the worst. He was ensuring that when difficulties arose, they wouldn't catch him off guard or throw him into emotional turmoil. He was practicing what we might call psychological armor, building resilience before he needed it. The first habit that can transform your mornings begins before you even get out of bed: intentional awakening. Instead of reaching for your phone the moment consciousness returns, spend 60 seconds in complete stillness. Feel the weight of your body against the mattress. Notice your breath moving naturally in and out. This isn't meditation, it's conscious arrival into the present moment. During these 60 seconds, set a simple intention. Today, I will respond rather than react. This distinction between responding and reacting is crucial to understanding how we can maintain inner freedom regardless of external circumstances. Reactions are automatic, emotional, and often regrettable. Responses are considered, purposeful, and aligned with our deeper values. The second transformative habit involves what Seneca called morning preparation of the soul. Before checking any external inputs, no news, no messages, no social media, spend 10 minutes asking yourself 3 specific questions. First, what challenges might I face today, and how can I meet them with virtue? Second, what am I truly grateful for in this moment? Third, how can I serve something larger than my immediate desires today? These questions aren't mere positive thinking exercises. They're designed to activate different neural pathways than the ones we typically engage when we immediately surrender our attention to external stimuli. By starting with reflection rather than consumption, we're training our minds to operate from a place of internal authority rather than external dependency. Seneca understood this principle deeply when he wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor." Our morning gratitude practice isn't about forced positivity. It's about recognizing the abundance that already exists in our lives before we begin the day's natural tendency toward wanting more, better, different. The third habit involves physical preparation that goes beyond basic hygiene. Ancient Stoics understood that the mind and body are intimately connected, and how we treat our physical form in the morning sets the tone for our entire relationship with discipline throughout the day. This means making your bed with complete attention and care, not as a chore but as a practice in bringing order to chaos. When we make our beds mindfully, we're practicing the same attention to detail that we'll need when facing larger challenges. We're proving to ourselves that we can bring excellence to small tasks, which builds confidence in our ability to handle significant responsibilities. It's a daily rehearsal for the kind of person we're becoming. But the most powerful aspect of this physical preparation involves something the Romans called cold exposure, what we might recognize today as cold showers or ice baths. Seneca regularly practiced voluntary discomfort, including cold exposure, because he understood that comfort is the enemy of growth. When we voluntarily choose temporary discomfort, we're training our capacity to remain calm and purposeful when involuntary discomfort arrives. Standing under cold water for even 60 seconds each morning does something profound to our nervous system. It activates our sympathetic nervous system in a controlled environment, teaching us that we can remain calm and breathe deeply even when our body is screaming at us to escape. This translates directly into our ability to stay centered during emotional stress, conflict, or unexpected challenges throughout the day. The fourth habit focuses on intellectual preparation through what Marcus Aurelius called philosophical reflection. This involves reading one paragraph from a philosophical text, whether it's the Stoic masters or any wisdom tradition that resonates with truth for you, and then spending 5 minutes thinking about how that wisdom applies to your current life circumstances. This isn't academic study. This is practical preparation for living wisely. When Epictetus taught his students, he emphasized that philosophy is useless unless it changes how we actually behave in daily life. So when you read about accepting what you cannot control, immediately think about specific situations in your life where you're currently wasting energy trying to control uncontrollable things. The fifth habit that can revolutionize your mornings involves what the Stoics called negative visualization, though the name sounds darker than the practice actually is. This involves spending a few minutes imagining the loss of something you value, your health, your relationships, your material possessions, even your life. The purpose isn't to create anxiety or pessimism, but to cultivate genuine appreciation for what you have while mentally preparing for life's inevitable changes. Seneca practiced this regularly, sometimes going entire days eating only bread and water, sleeping on hard floors, or wearing rough clothing. He wrote, "It is likely that some troubles will befall us, but it is not a present fact." How often has the unexpected happened? How often has the expected never come to pass? By voluntarily experiencing minor hardships, he was building psychological resilience for major challenges. When you practice negative visualization in the morning, you're not inviting tragedy into your life. You're developing what psychologists now call stress inoculation, the ability to remain calm and resourceful when facing real difficulties. More importantly, you're cultivating what the Stoics considered the highest form of gratitude, appreciation based on the recognition that everything we have is temporary and could be taken away at any moment. This practice transforms our relationship with everyday annoyances. When you've spent time imagining the loss of your car, being stuck in traffic becomes a minor inconvenience rather than a source of rage. When you've contemplated the fragility of health, a cold becomes something to manage rather than something to complain about. You begin to see most of your daily problems as the luxury problems they actually are. The sixth habit involves what we might call daily role definition. Before leaving your living space, spend 2 minutes clearly identifying the different roles you'll play throughout the day: parent, partner, colleague, citizen, friend, and committing to excellence in each role regardless of how others perform their roles. Epictetus taught that we all play multiple roles in life's drama, and our job is to play each role as well as possible without getting emotionally attached to other people's performances. If you're a parent, your job is to be the best parent you can be today, regardless of how your children respond. If you're an employee, your task is to bring your highest level of contribution, regardless of office politics or unfair treatment. This practice prevents one of the most common sources of daily frustration: expecting other people to meet our standards or respond to our efforts in specific ways. When we clearly define our roles and commit to excellence in each one, we become liberated from the exhausting game of trying to control other people's behavior through our own performance. The seventh habit focuses on temporal awareness, specifically, remembering that this day will never come again. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself of life's brevity, not to create morbid obsession with death, but to inspire purposeful action in the present moment. Before beginning your daily activities, spend 1 minute contemplating the irreplaceable nature of the next 16 hours. This isn't meant to create pressure or anxiety, but to cut through the mental fog that makes us treat each day as though we have unlimited time. When we truly grasp that today is finite and unrepeatable, we become naturally more intentional about how we invest our attention and energy. We become less willing to waste time on resentment, gossip, or activities that don't align with our deeper values. The eighth transformative habit involves what Seneca called philosophical journaling, but this isn't a therapeutic journaling focused on expressing emotions. This is analytical writing designed to increase self-awareness and wisdom. Before starting your day, write 3 brief observations: 1 thing you did well yesterday, 1 mistake you made and what you learned from it, and 1 specific way you plan to practice virtue today. This practice serves multiple purposes. First, it creates accountability for your character development. Second, it helps you identify patterns in your behavior that might otherwise remain unconscious. Third, it reinforces the Stoic understanding that we are works in progress, always capable of growth and improvement. The journaling should be honest but not self-attacking. When you identify mistakes, approach them with the curiosity of a scientist rather than the judgment of a critic. Mistakes are data, not verdicts on your worth as a human being. The goal is continuous improvement, not perfection. The ninth habit addresses something most people completely ignore: intentional breathing as a bridge between internal and external worlds. Before leaving your private space and entering the public world, spend 3 minutes practicing conscious breathing with a specific focus on your exhale being longer than your inhale. This activates your parasympathetic nervous system, creating physiological calmness that will serve as your foundation throughout the day. But more importantly, it serves as a reminder that your breath is always available as an anchor to the present moment. No matter what chaos erupts around you, you can always return to your breath as a source of stability and clarity. The Stoics understood that we cannot control external events, but we always have the power to control our breathing. This makes conscious breathing a practical exercise in distinguishing between what is and isn't under our control, the fundamental Stoic principle that determines our level of inner peace. The 10th and final habit involves what we might call purposeful transition. Instead of rushing from your morning preparation into the day's activities, create a deliberate moment of transition where you remind yourself of your larger purpose. Ask yourself, how can the person I'm becoming serve the world I'm entering? This question connects your personal development to something larger than self-improvement for its own sake. The Stoics believed that we are all part of a larger cosmic order, and our individual flourishing is connected to the flourishing of the whole. When we approach our day with this perspective, our work becomes service, our challenges become opportunities for character development, and our interactions become chances to model the kind of human being we want to see more of in the world. These 10 habits aren't meant to be implemented all at once or followed rigidly like a military routine. They represent different aspects of mental and spiritual preparation that can be adapted to your specific circumstances and gradually integrated into your natural morning rhythm. The key is consistency rather than perfection. Better to practice 3 habits regularly than to attempt all 10 sporadically. But here's what most people miss about morning routines, whether they're based on ancient philosophy or modern productivity science. The point isn't the activities themselves, but the person you become through practicing them. When you consistently choose discipline over comfort, reflection over reaction, and purposefulness over drift, you're literally rewiring your brain's default patterns. Neuroscience confirms what the Stoics intuited. Our brains are plastic, constantly reshaping themselves based on what we repeatedly think, feel, and do. Every morning that you choose conscious awakening over mindless phone checking, you're strengthening neural pathways associated with intentionality. Every time you practice voluntary discomfort, you're building resilience circuits that will serve you during involuntary hardships. The transformation happens gradually, almost imperceptibly at first. You might notice that you feel less reactive to traffic jams or difficult people. You might find yourself naturally pausing before responding to emails or text messages. You might discover that criticism stings less and praise inflates your ego less. These aren't dramatic breakthroughs, they're the quiet accumulation of wisdom through daily practice. What makes these habits particularly powerful is that they work regardless of your external circumstances. Whether you're wealthy or struggling financially, single or in a relationship, healthy or dealing with illness, you can practice intentional awakening, morning reflection, physical preparation, intellectual development, and purposeful transition. External conditions might require adaptations, but the core principles remain accessible. Consider how different your life might look 6 months from now if you began each day with this level of intentionality. Instead of being at the mercy of your immediate emotions and circumstances, you'd have developed what the Stoics called inner citadel, a fortress of character that remains stable regardless of external storms. This inner stability doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or indifferent to life's challenges. It means developing the capacity to experience the full range of human emotions without being overwhelmed or controlled by them. You feel anger when appropriate, but you don't let anger dictate your actions. You experience sadness when facing loss, but you don't let sadness convince you that life is meaningless. The morning habits we've explored are tools for developing this emotional resilience, but they require what Epictetus called continuous attention. You can't practice these principles for a few weeks and expect permanent transformation. Character development is like physical fitness. It requires ongoing maintenance and continued challenge to prevent decay. This is why the most successful practitioners of morning philosophy view these habits not as temporary self-improvement projects, but as lifelong practices that evolve and deepen over time. What begins as conscious effort gradually becomes natural inclination. What starts as discipline eventually becomes preference. But let's address the inevitable resistance you'll face, both internal and external. Your own mind will generate compelling reasons to skip your morning practices. You don't have enough time. They're not making a dramatic difference. They feel artificial or forced. These objections are normal and predictable. They're your brain's attempt to maintain comfortable patterns even when those patterns aren't serving your long-term well-being. External resistance might come from family members or friends who don't understand why you're suddenly acting different or being weird. Some people in your life have invested in you staying exactly as you are. because your growth might challenge their own comfort zones. This doesn't make them bad people, but it does require you to maintain commitment to your development even when others don't support or understand it. The Stoics faced similar resistance. Epictetus was often mocked by other slaves who didn't understand his philosophical studies. Seneca was criticized by Roman elites who thought his ideas were impractical. Marcus Aurelius faced constant pressure to abandon his morning reflections in favor of more urgent imperial business. Yet they persisted because they understood something crucial. The person you become through daily practice is your contribution to the world. When you develop genuine inner strength, you become a resource for others during difficult times. When you practice emotional regulation, you create stability in your relationships and communities. When you approach challenges with wisdom rather than reactivity, you model a different way of being human that others can learn from and be inspired by. This brings us to an important point about the relationship between individual development and social responsibility. Some critics of ancient philosophy argue that focusing on inner development is selfish or escapist, that we should be focused on changing external systems rather than changing ourselves. But this creates a false dichotomy. The most effective agents of positive change throughout history have combined deep personal development with committed action in the world. They understood that you cannot give what you do not have. If you haven't developed inner peace, you cannot create peace in your relationships. If you haven't learned to manage your own emotions, you cannot help others navigate their emotional challenges. If you haven't found meaning and purpose in your own life, you cannot guide others toward fulfillment. The morning habits we've explored are ultimately preparation for something larger, living as a philosopher in the truest sense of the word. This doesn't mean becoming an academic or someone who speaks in abstract concepts. It means becoming someone who loves wisdom enough to let it guide your daily choices, especially when those choices are difficult or unpopular. Living philosophically means recognizing that every interaction, every decision, every response to challenging circumstances is an opportunity to practice virtue or to fall short of virtue. The morning preparation gives you the foundation, but the real work happens throughout the day as you encounter the endless stream of situations that test your commitment to your principles. When someone cuts you off in traffic, that's a philosophy test. When a colleague takes credit for your work, that's a philosophy test. When you receive unexpected bad news, that's a philosophy test. When you achieve something significant and feel tempted toward arrogance, that's a philosophy test. The morning habits prepare you to recognize these tests as opportunities for growth rather than sources of frustration. What's remarkable about this approach to daily life is how it transforms your relationship with difficulty itself. Instead of viewing challenges as interruptions to your happiness, you begin to see them as essential components of your character development. This doesn't mean seeking out unnecessary hardship or enjoying suffering, but it does mean recognizing that a life without obstacles would be a life without opportunities for strength building. The Stoics had a beautiful phrase for this perspective. Impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Every obstacle becomes raw material for practicing patience, creativity, persistence, or acceptance. Every difficult person becomes a teacher helping you develop better boundaries, clearer communication, or deeper compassion. This philosophical approach to daily challenges creates what psychologists now call post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where people become stronger, wiser, and more resilient as a result of facing difficulties rather than in spite of them. But the key difference is that when you're prepared philosophically, you don't have to wait until after trauma to experience growth. You can find opportunities for development in everyday frustrations and minor setbacks. The morning habits we've discussed serve as daily reminders of your commitment to this philosophical life. When you practice intentional awakening, you're reminding yourself that consciousness is a gift that shouldn't be squandered on unconscious reactivity. When you engage in negative visualization, you're preparing your mind to find opportunity in loss. When you define your daily roles, you're committing to excellence regardless of external recognition or reward. As you continue developing these practices, you'll likely notice changes in how others respond to you. People are naturally drawn to those who seem unshakable in their core values while remaining flexible in their methods. They're attracted to individuals who can remain calm during crises while still caring deeply about outcomes. They respect those who take responsibility for their own emotional states without trying to control others' emotions. This doesn't happen overnight, and it's not about becoming perfect or enlightened. It's about becoming more consistently the person you want to be, especially during moments when it would be easier to be someone else. It's about developing what the Romans called gravitas, a weight of character that comes from years of choosing virtue over convenience. But perhaps the most profound change you'll experience is in your relationship with time itself. When you begin each day with purposeful intention, time stops feeling like something that happens to you and starts feeling like something you participate in consciously. Hours stop disappearing into mindless activities. You become more selective about how you invest your attention because you recognize attention as your most valuable resource. This transformed relationship with time naturally leads to what we might call temporal wisdom, the ability to distinguish between urgent and important, between busy and productive, between motion and progress. You become less susceptible to the cultural pressure to fill every moment with activity and more committed to filling your moments with meaning. The ancient Stoics understood that time is the only resource we truly own, and how we spend it determines the quality of our character and the value of our contribution. When Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live," he was pointing toward this conscious relationship with time and choice. As we conclude this exploration of morning habits that can transform your daily experience, remember that philosophy is not about achieving a perfect life. It's about developing a wise response to an imperfect world. The morning practices we've discussed are tools for building that wisdom, but they require the same commitment that any valuable skill demands. Start with whichever habits resonated most strongly with you. Practice them consistently for at least 30 days before deciding whether they're working. Remember that the goal isn't to feel dramatically different immediately, but to become gradually more aligned with your deepest values and commitments. The world needs more people who approach their days with intention, face challenges with wisdom, and treat both success and failure as opportunities for growth. Every morning you choose conscious preparation over mindless reaction, you're contributing to a more thoughtful, resilient, and virtuous society. If you found value in these ideas and want to continue developing your philosophical foundation, subscribe to this channel for more practical wisdom from ancient traditions applied to modern challenges. Share this video with someone who might benefit from starting their days with greater intentionality. Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, you have a choice. You can begin the day as you always have, or you can begin it as the person you're becoming. The habits are simple, but simple doesn't mean easy. They require nothing more than your commitment to becoming someone worth becoming. And that commitment, renewed each morning, is how we build lives of genuine meaning and lasting inner strength. The ancient philosophers understood something we often forget in our modern rush toward external achievement. The most important work we do is the work of becoming fully human. That work begins fresh every morning, with every conscious breath, every intentional choice, every moment we choose wisdom over convenience. This is how we honor the gift of being alive in a world that desperately needs more people committed to living wisely.